Can you please call the hearing number for the record?
This is Commission Hearing Number 11 of Monday, 7 October 2019, in Case 001, Dorothy Chang Him et al., and Case 096, Amo Chang Seng.
And we have added another case.
And Case 166, Julien Dauphin.
Thank you. Could you... I just want to say we're in our new premises in Perseverance. So anyone being heard this week or next week or in the future, hearings will be held at this building in Perseverance. And the address is, Michael? You might want to say that in Creole too.
L'adresse, nouveau l'endroit, la côte nous était comme là. Côte, tout ban les autres cas pour gagner écouter ça, moi. Il Persévérance, l'eau chemin Joséphine Catherine. Il y a un building qui, côté droite, et qui se mêle au pire côté de la étoile. Il peut esquer en face avec la boutique Ramajayan. Merci.
Thank you. Could you please call the first witness?
Mr. Ernesta.
Thank you, Mr. Ernesta, and thank you for coming back today. The Commission is very grateful to you for your willingness to come back. We recall your evidence on the last day of our September hearings when you were telling us about the events that had occurred at Grand Police in the early 1990s following an ambush of 2 commanders. I personally am interested to ask you some questions about the Army because you told us that you joined the Army in 1978 and that in the early days soldiers were subject to ridicule and that there was a general perception that Army officers were a bunch of thugs. And you thought that that was an unfair perception of the Army. The thing is, before this Commission, a lot of the complaints that we have received allege harassment, victimization, and abuse by the Army in the early days following the coup d'etat of 1977. And we've also heard evidence that the leaders in the Army, the majors, were all members of the coup d'etat and they were not trained Army people. So given that you sort of felt that perception was unfair, and we've received all these complaints, always alleging the Army and the People's Militia, and I'm not quite clear what the relationship was between the People's Militia and the Army. So I would be grateful if you could give us some evidence in relation to the conduct of the Army towards the civilian population following the coup d'etat of 1977.
Okay. Firstly, the Army was created. At that time, it was called the vanguard of the revolution. And it's a socialist dogma that you have the defense services to be the vanguard of the revolution. So the Army was created to defend the party in power initially. And for you to be able to qualify to be a member of the SPL, it was then called Socialist People's Liberation Army, you had to be a member of the party. So it was the main sort of defensive structure of the party. So people who were deemed not to be members of the party or to be in opposition to party principles were dubbed enemies of the revolution. And the Army was used effectively to crush the enemies of the revolution. As time went by, the army was also used to sort of take over the duties of the police, because the police was seen to be, in my view, and that was echoed several times, were seen to be too prone towards the colonial masters. And the politicians did not trust the police. So the trust was put into members of the defense forces. After the coup, those people who had been trained in Tanzania for the coup, they were initially called commandant. There were 4 or 5, Louise, Marego, Lika, Bonte, and subsequently James Michel. So they were the respective commanding officers of the various units.
So all of those people trained in Tanzania for the purpose of the coup d'etat?
That was conveyed to me by some of them afterwards. And obviously their first rank given to them was captain. Obviously they were not trained as leaders. When most of them had been poorly educated, so they never had the management skills required to sort of be in charge of men, especially when creating a new force. They never had the expertise. We banked on the Tanzanians. In fact, the first head of delegation that came here to be in charge of the Tanzanian training team was one Colonel Ngulizi. He later moved on to be minister. So the army was sort of trained based on the Chama Pinduzi doctrine, because they were from Tanzania, Nyerere. And the roles given to the army, apart from defending the revolution, was to participate in national development. Soldiers were used to build housing estates, roads. In fact, the NYS villages. But then subsequently, it turned out to be business opportunities for some of the senior officers.
Yeah. So some of the, we have heard evidence in some cases that the army was used for personal purposes, to build houses for individuals, so you're confirming that? They, okay.
No, but then initially, if a soldier had a construction at his place, people would sort of help him out. I mean, it was normal for a batch of soldiers to go out and help other soldiers. But what happened was that the senior officers would use soldiers for their own economic endeavors. I mean, their own sort of financial pursuits.
And that wasn't frowned upon? That was okay? The commander-in-chief, the president?
Everybody was aware of it. But then, you know, as and when what I may call the lower management, the first trained officers would graduate from military academies, then they would be the first ones to sort of frown upon the activities of the senior officers. And there were frictions at times, and most of the time you'll be just thrown out of the army. That's it. That would be it.
Because, so that sort of activity, we heard evidence that that was what caused the mutiny of soldiers, that abuse of using them and taking away their passes, and if they didn't carry out personal.
You know, I've listened to testimonies of former soldiers. In fact, that chap who was part of the mutiny or led the mutiny. Whilst there were abuses, there were also misunderstanding of the role of the soldier. Because obviously, if you're under command of someone who is untrained, then you have the wrong perception of what the soldiery is. Cancellation of pass for minor misdemeanors is the normal procedure in every army. But then some people tend to confound it with their perception of the commander. That is not to say that the commanders did not abuse them. So I tend to be very careful in separating what a soldier should do and what a soldier thinks he should do. You got my point. So a poorly trained soldier remains a poorly trained soldier. So you don't expect him to sort of see through the eyes of a professional soldier. And that was possibly the main problem.
But were there regular training programs for the soldiers when they were first recruited? I mean, was there some sort of process for training and then improving on that training and so on as the system went along?
It took time. Initially, the training had a major setback. You will bring in Tanzanians, they never spoke our language. So you had to sort of have translators. And we had soldiers who were not necessarily educated, or that is why after that we had the literacy campaign within the defense forces. So it took a while for a proper training doctrine to sort of come in place. After all, you needed to have the basis to create that doctrine. And that would come about after, I said, 10, 15 years, after you've trained junior officers, non-commissioned officers through proper institutions. Until that time came, we were in limbo.
If I can take you back to, you said that soldiers were really, created to defend the party, right? And that people that were not members of the party, were dubbed enemies of the revolution.
Yeah.
So if I'm an enemy of the revolution, what's the army going to do to me? They're going to follow me? I mean, what?
No.
What?
No, that was the psyche at the time. But the army were used, I mean, if one of the commanders would come and say, and took a bunch of men or soldiers, call it what you may, and say, you go and bash up a specific family, which happened several times, because those commanders of the early times, they had their own feuds with people. So often they would come and take a bunch of soldiers and have, to sort of settle their own feuds, their own personal vendettas. And that happened.
And if somebody took a bunch of soldiers to go and bash somebody up, was there any ramifications? Was that seen as unlawful by the army, or?
At the time, no. Where would you go? Where would the victims go? Where would they go to seek redress?
So not the police? Would the police challenge the army at all?
No.
No.
In fact, there were many occasions where the police and the army would literally fight it out. I mean, that's the way it was.
Mr. Ernesta, good morning. In a sense, the army was used by those in power to create an atmosphere of fear. And a lot of Seychellois, for example, were afraid of even their own shadows, to the point that Seychellois stopped talking. Seychellois was afraid of everything. In those days, you yourself, if I'm not mistaken, you gave us a qualification people used to call you. Do you remember the name, the title that they call you?
Me?
Yeah.
No. No, the point is, most of the commanders never knew how to read and write. So, and they would go to the banks, well, they had to do documentations and all, and everybody would know that Mr. X and Y could not even sign his name, or, you see. So whenever they saw you in uniform, they would say, oh, here's another one, you see. So that was this. That was the attitude, and many people suffered because of that.
What I meant was there was a sort of a reign of terror. The army was controlling nearly everything, and a lot of Seychellois, they were afraid of the army, and especially there are special people, they were more afraid than others.
Obviously, but at that time, as a member of the army, you don't come to that realization. You got my point, because you're part of the system. You wake up in the morning, you go do your job, and you go back to your unit or whatever. So you don't really see the bigger picture. Now we're reflecting back. I mean, I joined the army, I was 18. So after a while, you reflect back and you realize that you were part of a machinery. You see, but as a soldier, you don't think about it. You're a soldier.
Mm-hmm. Would you have in your mind sort of a list of activities you have been engaged in causing problems, causing difficulties in the life of a Seychellois, and they, as a result from the action of the army and part of your action as well, Seychellois were on their knees. Do you have in mind a list of decisions you have taken? In our last meeting, you presented your apology to Seychelles, and I think it would be good for you to be able to mention things that you have done, so that people who have been hurt could say, oh, I can identify myself in what you are saying, and I can forgive you.
Let me put it in phases. When I was a soldier, I'm talking in the rank of private. I was fortunate in that I was not involved in activities where the army would be sent out to sort of attend to personal feuds. The reason is simple. I was basically used because I was literate. I was basically used for administrative duties or to be translators and that sort of stuff. So I was never really in the front line when things were happening. As an officer, I came as chief of operations, especially. That was basically my first encounter, really, with civilian, well, call it criminals or people dissing in internal security operations. At Grand Police, well, I recall, I can state there are people who have been flogged. They used to have polythene pipe, quarter-inch polythene pipes, and they would to bash people with it. And what else? I mean, people will be severely manhandled. That's it. It's not that I can give you an account of each and every one of that. That is not possible because I was not present in each and every case. You know.
I think it would be a good thing if you could at least mention some names of people. Otherwise, our going towards the truth and reconciliation, people would say, I don't know what you're talking about, so we need to understand who were the people who were hurt so that these people can say, okay, I can accept your apology, I can accept.
I spoke of two chaps, the first two.
In Grand Police.
One was Louise, I don't recall his first name. One was Louise. The other was one, Marie. He resided at Belom at the time. Who else that come to mind would be one could have been is turned Muslim, so his name was changed. His Christian name was Leng. He was living at Beaulieu. Who else? That's about it. People that I directly interacted with. Mm-hmm. Because mind you, I was the chief of operations. I had officers who did so. I'm talking of people I directly interacted with. Otherwise, most people would be dealt with by other officers, not me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I was in charge of the operation. You got me.
So, if you were in charge of the operation, did you set the limits of what could be done to people to get it? No. It was free for all.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then again, there were a lot of intervenants in the operation. I was the senior most officer on ground, but the operation was being directed by the president himself. So, in fact, went on TV to talk about the operation. So. He took it personally.
I think we heard from you last time that it was whatever means necessary was his direction. I just want to ask you a bit about the relationship between the army and the People's Militia. Were the People's Militia like under the command of the army, or what was the relationship between the two?
You know, I was privileged to be the commander of the People's Militia from 1986. In 1986, there was a coup attempt from within. So there was a redeployment of personnel and restructuring of the forces because the senior officers had been retired. So I was sent to take over the Seychelles People's Militia. And,
Can I just ask who launched that coup attempt in?
Louise, I mean, all the commanders were in there. And in fact, I stood between them and government.
So he was the Minister of Defense at the time?
He was the Minister of Defense at the time, yeah. And the CDF, Chief of Defense Forces at the time.
Okay. And he wanted to launch a coup with who else?
All those commanders, you know, it's a funny story. At some point in time, I was called by the Minister of Defense to train the commanders. So I was at
sorry,
Rapolis. Huh?
Sorry, just to clarify, these commanders were the people that were given their positions after the coup d'etat?
After the coup d'etat, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I was training them in weaponry. Yeah.
Did that include James Michel as well?
No.
He was the only one not in it?
James Michel and Vidot were the only two senior leaders who were not in it.
So Marengo, Bonte,
All the rest.
they were in there.
Yeah.
Does that include Luca?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I trained them. And I never knew they were planning a coup. So they would come by helicopter to Grand Police. Grand Police was the military training center. And I would train them. They would come by helicopter twice a week or something. And I was the adjutant and training officer at the military training center then. My commanding officer was Marengo. So one day he asked me whether I would be in unit. I said, yeah, I'll be in unit because we were in training. So he came at around 9 p.m. and told me that they needed my assistance to take over Defense Forces headquarters. I said, but for what purposes? He says, we've been taken for a ride because we did the coup and we should be ministers and not juniors, because they were fed up of taking orders from ministers and others in the country. So I questioned him about his plans, and he told me he had Louise and all the rest at what's the place? Osforba. Not Osforba, where Asher was blown up there. Marie-Louise. So he had them at Marie-Louise, and they were waiting for me to lead a group to Defense Force headquarters. So they gave me the list of officers who were involved and all. I refused. I said, no, I'm not participating. So we went on stand 2. He left. And he came back about 2 days later. And he said he had changed his mind and blah, blah, blah. He went on and told Michel to sort of go hide himself and the rest of it. So after that, they redeployed, and I went to the Seychelles People's Militia. And that is when the MPO was created, the Ministry of Political Organization. And its minister was Minister Gimo, Esme Gimo, the late Esme Gimo. So I was made the National Militia Commander, and under the SPM, Seychelles People's Militia, was the militia per se, and the BML, Brigade Militaire Lazinese, so the Youth Brigade. And Gilles Lyonnais was the commander of that brigade. So basically we had about 2,500 to 3,000 men under control. I spent about a year, more than a year. And then I requested to be returned to the army.
And what sort of activities did the People's Militia carry out? I mean, we have...
The People's Militia had, they had regional headquarters in most regions, about 5 or 6, one on Prale. And they would carry out mostly static duties, government locations, and then there was always this fear of ingression by the sea. So they would be deployed along the coast and that sort of stuff.
And would they go around to enemy of the state's people's houses and harass them?
Oh yeah. They were a special breed. I mean, oh yeah. Not that it was, it came from any orders from nowhere, no. It's just that they were people from the various districts and for various communities had their feuds. And if you were sort of not with them, then you had to be against them. So they'll harass you. It was not like it was, it came from higher up. No, it's just, but nothing was done to curtail that. You see.
I guess the regime benefited from that, right?
Obviously, yeah.
But so if I'm not with you, that means I must be against you.
You have to.
I can't be neutral?
I don't know. I don't know. I did not decide that. No, but then there's one funny thing as well. You know, most soldiers who left the army, they were treated as not with us. Because, you know, the question was, why is it that he's leaving? And sadly, a lot of soldiers who left the army did not get jobs because they were innocent. I mean, you've served 6, 12, 10 years, you leave. But they were penalized just for leaving the army. That was the psyche.
So they couldn't get jobs, civilian jobs, because by leaving the army, they were not with you.
In this country, it's not only government jobs you did not get. Private enterprises were unwilling to associate themselves with you, who is seen to be an enemy of the state. So it was, I've been through it, so because I turned out to be the enemy at some point in time. So. And even private individuals will not associate themselves with you because there's a cost to doing it.
And were the People's Militia armed?
Yeah.
They were armed. Okay.
Armed to the teeth. But poorly trained.
I was going to ask, and did they get training as to how to use firearms?
They did, but poorly trained. Some of them were very old, most of them were sort of alcoholics. Poorly trained.
And were they paid for their service as People's Militia?
No, it was
No?
voluntary.
Voluntary.
How long did they last for?
No, quite a while. I won't recall. I think they were disbanded just before the Third Republic. Yeah, and they turned into the National Guards. Yeah, they turned into the National Guards.
And the National Guards are still around?
No.
No.
It's been disbanded.
And what did they do?
No, but the National Guards they were a better bunch because they were handpicked. They were relatively well trained, and they were used to guard government establishments.
Monsieur Ernesta, bonjour.
Bonjour, Monsieur Couy.
How long you were in charge of Grand Police?
I was never in charge of Grand Police.
Chief
Grand Police was used as a harbor. So, Grand Police was a prison initially, and then it was closed down. We went to Grand Police simply because I had to find a place where soldiers could be accommodated, taken care of, and rest. So the ideal place was Grand Police. Grand Police was never a base per se, no. It was what we call harbor. That is where we temporarily, as soldiers, put up. And the political authorities decided that that is the place where people would be ultimately questioned. And so it was not a base per se. It lasted a few weeks because from the last time we met till now, I did some research on Seli. So the operation started, as per the records on Seli, at around August, mid to end of August, and ended by September, October, 98. Because I downloaded two or three cases that went to court.
So when you say people were questioned, it reminds me like the Gestapo. What were the method used to question people at that time? The method of questioning people?
Yeah, but some if people sort of answered questions, some was done by the police. Most of the questionings were done by the police. And then the military intervened. And then people were sort of, confessions had to literally be extracted from people.
How? If you are extracting question or answer from people, you shall have to use harsh methods.
Harsh, yes.
Yeah, how? I want to know the methods. How?
Some people were beaten up.
If by any coincidence you don't answer the question, what will happen to you?
What questions?
The question they were put to them because you were using harsh method, but it can happen, some can rebel not to answer the question asked. In that case, what can happen? I'm just seeing a scenario of somebody not wanting to answer the question put to them by the police or the army forces.
They're kept in custody. They're kept in custody for extended periods.
Were there people, I mean, in all of this, people taken in for questioning and harsh methods being used and so on, were there people who were killed? Were there people who died as a result?
No.
That you know of?
No.
Disappeared?
No.
We did hear evidence that after the mutiny of soldiers, there was one soldier that disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
You never heard anything about that, or?
No, I knew him well. We trained together. But during the mutiny, I was not in the country. But I knew him. We trained together.
What was his name again? I forgot his name.
Popono.
Andrew
Popono.
Okay. And
he was a commando at Exile.
Okay. And the army never did any investigation into... Are you aware of the army investigating where he disappeared?
No.
Maybe we'll try and get the file.
What happened to the soldier called the nickname Jamaican?
Jamaican he died. He died of old age.
Not during the mutiny.
No. Jamaican was one of the participants of the coup. He died of old age. He was made a corporal in the army, but never served per se. I mean, Jamaican was a thug.
Ernesta, maybe a question quite simple. You were a very senior, I would say, rank officer in the army. It's a very personal question, you may answer or not. Why did you left the army?
Why did I leave the army? Yeah. That's a long story. You want to hear about it? Okay. I left the army voluntarily, but then I'll give you the backdrop of what led to my premature retirement. It all started, you know, when the operation was downgraded. I told you about that. And then I was requested to select a team to assist in all aspects of national security. So I created a team. We were 12. So, and the activities were directed mainly towards the fight against drugs. So we collaborated mainly with ADAMS then. ADAMS stands for Anti-Drug and Marine Section of the Police. It was called ADAMS then. So we set to the task. We had everything available to do what was needed to be done. And as chief of operations as well, so I had the whole defense services to be used if required. So what we did, we started with what we call cordon and search operations. Cordon is you cordon off an area, and then you search within that area. It worked well because each cordon and search we did, we came up with drugs. So it was working. And there was no issue of people being tortured or people being mistreated. It was professionally done. But then came a time when I realized that there were loopholes. Because if you're going to carry out a cordon and search exercise, you have to have the main players to be briefed, let's say. And then I realized that there was a loophole. People were siphoning information, and the cordon was becoming a joke because we were literally failing because there was someone from the inside giving information to the outside. So I decided to stop this cordon and search thing and stuck to my core team. So I had cultivated a group of informers. And one day, one of the informers came to me and says, you know, we've been called by a senior officer of the police, and he's advised us to get our parents to write to the president, complaining about me. I said, yeah? He says, yeah. True to his words, letters came in from the president's office to Defense Forces headquarters complaining about me. So I said, there's a problem somewhere. Because if you're hot on the heels of those drug dealers, and then suddenly, because their parents or grandparents are supporters of the ruling party, you get a letter from the president. I mean, they write to the president, and the president annotates and sends it down to Defense Forces headquarters and says, tell Ernesta to stop this thing, you see. So that was my first inkling that there was informers from within. And then there came a time when one chap from the, one of those drug dealers came to me and says, I want you to import some drugs for me. I said, but I'm not in the drug importation business. He said, no, I've been told you can do that. I said, okay. So I went to the chief. I said, I've been approached by a drug dealer to import drugs. I said, I don't mind doing it, provided you know about it and we'll get this chap to court. then he comes back, my boss comes back and says, okay, the president has agreed. So I import the drugs. On the address of the SPDF. SPDF dispatcher collects the drugs from the post office, brings into DFHQ. So I unpack the drugs and I show it to all the officers. This is the lot of drugs that I am going to deliver to the dealer. So I repack the drugs and I'm on my way to deliver, control delivery. I get a call from the chief. He says, the president is boarding, is going on overseas mission. He says, make sure this chap is caught. So I deliver the drugs. That chap gives me 20,000 rupees, which I give to the chief as evidence. That drug dealer is arrested with his 4 kgs of drugs. So I expect to go to court to testify, and that chap will face justice. 2 days later, I see him walking in town. So I inquire, I say, but this chap has been arrested. I delivered 4 kgs of drugs to him, and now he's walking freely. So the chief says, that's not possible. I said, but I've seen him. So I contacted the commissioner of police, contacted several officers, and they say, oh, this chap has left the country. I said, my God, we have a huge case, and suddenly disappears. This chap has never faced the courts. Then in that case, I become sort of an unwanted fellow. And then the worst case scenario was, I had the information that 200 kgs of ashes was entering the country. Facts. And it was still at the airport cargo terminal. So I informed my boss, I informed the commissioner of police. I said, there's a huge load of drugs coming in. So I'm going to establish surveillance on the drugs. That is what I did. About 2 or 3 days, that chap was supposed to pick up the drugs. Never came. So the drug is still lying at the cargo terminal, well under supervision. You know, there's a building next to the cargo terminal at the airport. It was under construction. So we put up there during the night. So one evening, I went there just to give morale to the troops. And by 3 in the morning, I walked down to the parking area just to have a closer look of what is happening. It was around 3 in the morning. And there were 2 security officers, a lady and a gentleman. So I greeted them. And I left. At 9:30 in the morning, I was called by the chief. He shows me a file. So I scanned the file. In the file was, can you imagine, in the file was a reports by the 2 security officers at the gate I had met, their supervisors, the chief of security at the airport, the police, the chief of commissioner of police. Everything had been annotated, proper filing. So I asked the chief, my boss, said, I went there at 3 in the morning. Offices open at 8. So how come the file is on your desk at 9:30? How come they've worked on the file from 3 in the morning to 9:30 the same day? I say, And I tell him, I'm out of this game because I'm going to lose my life. So I call off the surveillance. I was driving back home at around 4 in the afternoon, and I heard it on the radio that a batch of drugs had been taken out of the airport, and the packing had been discovered in Upper Cascade, and 4 chaps had been arrested, but nothing happened. That's it. So I said, that's it. And then I realized how serious the corruption is at the highest level. That to me is corruption at the highest level. And that is when I said, I told the chief I quit. And I stopped the anti-drug operations. Then they sent me to the police to assist the police. When I reached there, I was given Chief Superintendent coup to work with. The Commissioner of Police at that time was Kiledo. Yeah.
And who was the chief that you reported to?
Kanapayat, the Chief of Staff.
Okay.
Well, he's been my immediate boss throughout. So I went to the police. I was sent to the police to assist because they were having problems. Obviously, they were having problems because the police had been purged of several senior officers. So I went there. The morale was low.
Can I ask why were they purged? What were they purged for?
Political reasons.
Political reasons.
Obviously.
They didn't support the party.
Yeah.
What year are we talking?
Must be around 203, 204.
203, 204. So
yeah.
Not supporting the party in 2003, 2004,
No.
you could lose your job.
No, but Seychelles remains very much a one-party state.
So even today,
Even
not supporting
today.
the party,
Yeah.
no job.
Even today.
Okay, thank you.
So I go there, morale was low. 10 officers had recently been sort of removed. And there I got problems again. Because, there's a feud between myself and the commissioner. He sees me as a threat. I've been given an order by the commander-in-chief to go help the police. But we achieved, we had less than 400 men at the time. We achieved a response time of less than 5 minutes throughout the whole country. It's there, that is there. But I did not last long because often I would get a call from State House to release X, Y, and Z, and I would refuse. So
you were obviously releasing people that were with them, not people that weren't with them.
now you get a call,
Yeah.
and they say you release X and Y.
But why those particular people? Because they were party supporters?
Yeah, not party supporters, yeah. And one case was personal friend of the president, family of the president, So.
Who was the president you're mentioning?
James Michel. He called me, he says, I give you an order, you go to the police. He had hinted to me about going to the police, but I've always said, no, I won't go there. But he called me one day, he says, I order you to go to the police. So I went. And then he would call and say, you release X and Y. I said, no. And then we had problems. So, the malaise between self and the commissioner was starting to become vocal. So I left. I went back to HQ and told them, I'm not going back to police. Obviously, they were annoyed, very annoyed. And that is, so it fueled on. And then they decided I should die.
Who decided you should die?
It must have been the president.
The president decided that you should die because
he should get rid of me.
insubordinate.
Insubordination, and then, well, I sent him. There's a fine line between being stupid and being brave. When all those problems were arising, I would send him messages. I'll say to the chief, I say, you tell James Michel that I saved his life. At least he should not be sort of making life difficult for me. You see? So.
When did you save his life, James Michel?
In '86, during the coup. I stood between him and the coup.
You physically stood between him.
So he was not at all happy. And then they created a story of me importing weapons and getting a yacht over to conduct a coup. If I wanted to conduct a coup in this country, I would have done it in 5 minutes. But that was the story created. And then they started by trying to get rid of me. And I ended up in Europe, in Dublin. The financing was
So
done.
can I just clarify? So you were certain they were going to kill you, so you left the country?
No.
Or
You know, they poisoned my water tank once. So I told the chief, I said, they've poisoned my water tank. It's useless going to the police. And then they loosened the nuts of the wheels of my vehicle once. And I got very annoyed, and I was a bit, well, I uttered what I felt in very rude terms. And then I told my boss, I'm going to leave the army, and I'm going to fight you people. That's how I told him. So I said nothing. He came back the following day and says, what are you going to do on leaving the army? I said, I don't know. I'm leaving, but I'm informing you that I'll be leaving at the end of my contract. And I had about, 15 months or 16 months left on my contract. So he says, why don't we can offer you a deal. So what's the deal? And a course. I said, a course. I said, that's fine. Executive Management, Ireland, IMI, Institute of Irish Management Institute. And it was 2 institutes, and the Institute of Public Administration, Dublin. So I said, fine. And then I found myself with the former Secretary of State planning this thing. And then I'm off to Dublin. But I was a bit naive. That was the way they were going to use to sort of get rid of me. Everything was paid for. I was given an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. Everything was paid for. My family to and from Seychelles, mobile, on roaming, everything was paid for. Not a single cent from my salary. The course itself was costing like 1,000 euros per day, per capsule. A lot of money. And my pocket money was being given for free. It was Chang, the governor of the central bank, who was in charge of financing this thing. So that's it. They bugged my room, I was aware. And when it got a bit bad, it was going to get very bad, I slipped to Ghana.
So how did you know it was getting bad? So you knew they bugged your room?
But I could see them. You know, those Irish, they were not professionals.
I don't really know about the Irish.
You don't know?
No, I don't know the Irish. Can you tell me about the Irish?
Yeah, the Irish, they came here. In fact, they came here sometime prior to my going to Ireland. And they were involved in a debugging operation for the president. And because of their success in debugging State House, then the president sort of had all the trust in them.
This is President Michel.
Yeah. Had all the trust in them. So they were given the task of taking care of me. And you know, I was the chief of operations of the SPDF, and they were like, "We found you a job in Ireland." They gave me a Jeep. I was given a Jeep, brand new Jeep, which I was to use to go to work. IBM Ireland. So the Irish chap comes one day and says, "We're going to meet the CEO IBM." The following day I say, "Okay, that's fine." And the following day he comes to collect me. I say, "No, I'm not going." Then he was very annoyed. That is when I decided to sleep. And I had two passports. I had a private passport and an official passport. So they were tracing me on the official passport. So I took my private passport, sent to London to get the visa for Ghana. And then I slipped to Ghana.
Why Ghana?
I had a good friend from Ghana. I met him in Manchester, a rich chap. So he helped me out. Went to Ghana. And then I crossed the border into Togo. That was to meet his guru. He called it his guru. And I was caught whilst crossing back the Togo-Ghanaian border. But after negotiations, I was released about 6-7 hours later.
Why Togo? Why
No, Togo. I said Togo because we were to meet he says the guru of my friend, the Ghanaian, who was living in Manchester, who helped me to go to.
So if I just want to make sure I understand correctly. You were insubordinate to the president. You weren't doing what he asked you to do with respect to releasing people from jail.
Mm-hmm.
So then they decided you should die. So they sent you to Dublin, where the Irish were, and the Irish, you believe, had the mandate to
get rid of me.
To get rid of you. So you slipped into Ghana to avoid that. How long did you stay away for? When did you come back? And
I slipped into Ghana. I came back. I spent 15 or 21 days, I don't recall, in Ghana. I came back. When I came back to Ireland, they had occupied my apartment. So I called the governor of the central bank and says to him, "What's wrong? They've occupied my apartment." And then
who is it? The Irish?
The Irish.
Not the landlord.
No, the Irish. My things were there. I'd sleep there. My things were there. So they had occupied the apartment. I had the keys to the apartment. I came, I opened the apartment, and the apartment was being occupied. So I called the governor. I said, they've occupied my apartment. No, he says, no. They thought you had left and blah, blah, blah. I said, how can they think I've left if they're the ones who are responsible for me? There must be a problem with those chaps. So I put up in a hotel. It was self and my daughter. I put up in a hotel for a few days, and then I'm given back the apartment. And I decided I should come back to Seychelles. So I go to the airport, I have a ticket. I check in to fly back to Seychelles. And my daughter was with me, she was with me. And once we were having coffee or something, a chap pushes a piece of paper to me, says, I believe that is yours. So, and they walk away, two of them. And I look at the paper, it says, call the chief of staff urgently. So I called the chief of staff, and he says, don't come down because it's dangerous. I said, what's the problem? I'm coming down. I'm the chief of operations, I'm essential, I'm coming down. He says, no, don't come down, it's dangerous. So I say, okay. He was like alarmed. I said, okay.
Who was the chief of staff?
Colonel Payette.
Colonel Payette.
No.
He was always your senior officer.
He was always my immediate. So I go back, I retrieve my luggage. It was in, it was at Gatwick. I retrieve my luggage. And I called the chief. I say, you want me to stay in Europe? I don't have cash. He says, no problem. He must have handed the phone to someone. And it was an Irish at the end of the line, in Seychelles, talking to me. It turned out that the Irish had taken over the operations of the army. They were the personal sort of security to Michel, because Michel felt threatened. So he says, okay, someone will deliver cash to you tomorrow at Asda parking in Manchester. So it was, he says, at around 10 or whatever. So I told my daughter, tomorrow we're going there 3 hours earlier. So I went there 3 hours earlier, and I would tell my daughter, this is one of them. So I could see them coming. I'm a soldier. And they would preposition themselves onto the car park. And ultimately I told her, that is the one carrying the money. So I went to him and says, you're looking for Mr. Ernesta? And he's like, oh, give me the money. So he gives me the money, and I walk away. In fact, I was nearly arrested in Europe because it was a bunch of 500 euro notes. And in Europe, you don't present 500 euro notes at the counter. So I had to explain where I got the $500 euro notes. And so comes December, it was December 2006. Comes December, I decide to come down to Seychelles. But then they had invalidated my ticket.
So,
and
how much money did they give you?
I don't recall, but a lot of money. I don't recall.
Ballpark figure?
Maybe 10, 15,000 euros. A lot of money. And at a time when Seychelles was having problems in foreign exchange. And they're funding someone. I mean, it was like, what, paid exile, if you may call it that. Yeah, comes December, and I say, I'm going down because I knew my family was very worried about me. So I told the Irish, I said, I'm going down. He says, I don't think so. So they had invalidated my ticket. I got a new ticket. I flew in. And they were not expecting me. So I called my boss, say, I'm in Seychelles. I said, I'm in Seychelles. I want to meet you. She says, okay, come tomorrow. So there was about, a month or so left on my contract, a month or two. So I said, I'll apply for leave till the end of my contract. And he said, no. There's no need to apply for leave. You just stay at your place. So I come in, it was 10th of February. I'm released from the force. You know, normally when you're released from the force, it takes you about a month, 2 months, times even to get whatever is due for you. On 10th of February, I went there, had checks that had been signed since 1st of February for all my dues. So I took them and left the force. But leaving the force was another story. I was tagged and followed, and well, they try, no one can harass me. I mean. And at
So
that point,
after you left the force, then you were tagged and followed, and your phone bugged still, or?
yeah,
Yeah.
but they had control over everything, so.
And we're talking 2007.
Yeah.
Okay. And today, you're quite safe today
I've always been safe. I know how to take care of
because you're
myself.
not afraid. Yeah.
So I called the chief. I say, you sort of get those people off my trail because I'm going to do very nasty things. Then they quit. You see, I can be nasty. I'm a soldier after all. Huh?
And you have got a reputation.
Excuse me?
And you have got a reputation.
Obviously. But then even you go for jobs, no one will employ you. You see? And you see, and people can be very sarcastic. I went to an employment agency, and she looks at my this thing, that parting letter they write when you leave the service, and somewhere it says he was a worthwhile ambassador of his country, and the lady says, but you should be looking for an ambassadorial position, not here. I say, oh my God, well, that's politics, so it is. Yeah.
Why you manage and how you manage to go from army to politics?
How do I manage? But I told them, even when I was in the army, I told them I would leave the army and I will campaign against you. I told the chief. I told James Michel. Yeah, so it's not that the system is wicked. We have to get rid of it. And you see, looking back, I mean, I could have taken another route, but I decided that I should leave the army and do what I'm doing now.
When you say the system is wicked, what do you mean by that? Because either you're with us or you're against us, that, or the ramifications, of holding on to power when you have that sort of mindset. Because you were in the army and the People's Militia, and these were people that were implementing this system, but it took you a long time to leave, right? So it wasn't what you saw during that time that made you.
No, but I joined the army, I was 18. You know, it all depends where you are in the system. A soldier would think of nothing else. He goes, he does his job, and goes back to barracks. The moment you reach a level where it's basically military oblique political, then you start to realize that there's a problem. Because after all, once you start sort of flirting with politicians, then the problems arise. Because you're selected to go to the police, you're selected to do X, Y, and Z, because you happen to be a favorite of the politicians. But then there's a limit to what one can do. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, you said, you joined the army at the age of 18, still very young, but still you also said that the army was created as the vanguard of the revolution and to defend the party.
Yeah.
So you must have known that from the start.
I knew that, I believed in that.
Okay. So why then should you have objected to the political aspects of the army's work?
But you grow. People grow. You learn from your life experience. I mean, if you don't learn from your experience, where do you learn from? You grow.
I guess it's, like you were, I understand, you matured in your outlook. It's just, when I think about not letting people out of jail, and yet, on the one hand being a catalyst for like wanting to get out. But all these things that were happening to the civilian population, that the army and the people's militia were doing, throughout that period, that didn't impact you and make you think this was a wicked system at that time at all? I mean, we have complaints where people, allege that people were murdered by the army. People disappeared, and if it was the army and the people's militia that were terrorizing the people, the evidence at this stage seems to indicate, it's the army that's involved in those sorts of crimes. You started off as a low level, but you're a professional soldier. You went up the ranks. You were a commander, right? And you weren't a member of the original coup d'etat.
No.
So you did very well in the army, I think, in those circumstances.
No, but you see, how will I put it? The army is a broad word to use. Many of the atrocities that were created, I mean, when the army was first created, in the early years, it was not like the army. People were handpicked to do specific jobs, but they happened to be soldiers. It was not like everyone in the army was involved in it. There were few handpicked people. So most members of the army would not know about it. So they would be confidantes of the,
I mean, that sort of fits with the same names that keep coming up in our complaints in a way.
It was not like...
When you were at the police force, you say Mr. Kiledo was the commissioner.
Yeah.
Did you ever act as commissioner?
No.
No. You were never acting commissioner?
No. I was sent to assist him. They had crime was up, and they had a real problem. So I went there and I organized response. When we achieved nationally less than 5-minute response throughout the country. But obviously I'm not a policeman. And other aspects of police duties would suffer. You see, evidence collection, prosecution, you see. So,
respect of the right of individuals? Would that suffer as well?
No, I don't believe so, no. Because I was working with Chief Superintendent coup. So he was a police officer. He was the police officer. I was basically there on the management aspects, the operational aspects, organizing response and this stuff. No.
Monsieur Ernesta, somebody may assume that you were one of the most privileged people in the army.
I don't think so, no.
No, it's an assumption.
Okay, it's an assumption.
Okay. Because I came to know you in the 90s, 1981, 91, as the one in charge of the Social Defense Academy.
I created the academy.
Okay. For what purpose?
For training. I mean, Seychelles needed a training institution and created the academy.
You have mentioned several occasions that the army was badly trained and that you have tried to get them proper training. Is it something that you discussed with the Commander-in-Chief and try to plan a strategy for?
Yeah. No, but I was responsible for training.
And you had all the support you needed, financial and otherwise?
No, nobody questioned me. I mean, I had a blank check, basically, as far as training and operations were concerned.
Would that apply to the whole army as well? They had a blank check?
In terms of?
Equipment of arms, ammunition, salaries, perks, whatever.
That salaries and perks was not my forte. I was in operations. Money was not my forte. I had nothing to do with it. But I worked on schemes of services. In fact, the scheme of service that came into effect 2 months after I left, I was the one who worked on it.
My last question. If you say nobody could question you, you must admit you were very powerful.
I delivered.
Based on
I delivered. I knew my job. I was possibly the best trained officer of the force. I knew my job. And I literally ran the army.
For all the privileges.
No, I've been a soldier. You know, when you say, when you talk of privileges, I don't like the word because privileges would imply making use of resources available under your command. You see, I'm aware that many senior officers would make use of resources available under their command, especially financial resources. I won't mince words here. But that certainly did not apply to me, because I spent my time with the troops uphill. If you were in the SPDF, you would have known that. I mean, the office was not my stuff.
You didn't get your house built?
No. In fact, I have nothing built by the SPDF.
One thing I want to know, you said that people were handpicked to do certain jobs, and that sort of resonates with me because I keep seeing these same names coming up in complaints. If people were handpicked to do certain jobs, who was doing the handpicking?
The president himself.
The president himself.
Or someone designated by the president
and who,
for a specific job. On most occasions, it would be the chief.
The chief. And that's Colonel
Payette. On most occasions, it would be him.
Okay.
I mean, during my time as chief of operations, what transpired before 1992, I would not be aware.
Mr. Ernesta, for me there is something that you mentioned concerning drug trafficking. Would you say that the army could have been used to help dealers, or was the army involved as a body in drug trafficking itself?
I can't point fingers, but what I can say with utmost certainty is that officers of the highest level were involved in drug trafficking.
The highest level would be the president, right, as the commander-in-chief.
I won't go that far, I'll say.
Not that far?
My level. Because we were operating at a certain level, my level, I would say. And there came a time I never knew who to trust. You see, that's the way it is. And I suppose that was 10 years ago. I wonder what the situation is nowadays. There's one funny thing in this country. Everybody knows who deals in drugs. Everybody. Even the president will come on TV and says, we know who they are, but nothing happens.
Why?
Because it's corrupt. I mean, who in Seychelles do not know who deals drugs in their respective communities? You tell me.
Me. I don't. I don't know.
No, yeah. But that's a fact of life we have to live with. It's a fact. And as long as you don't get rid of corrupt people within the system, drug will continue to be a major scourge.
I'd like to take you back to the army again, in a figurative way.
Mm-hmm.
When a recruit joined the army, what were his salary, other benefits that he had?
I won't recall the salaries, but it was okay. It was fine.
How did it go?
Normally they'll join as a recruit. In fact, you don't join the army as a recruit. You're inducted as a recruit. You go through a training program, which at that time was 4 months. On successful completion of the program, you become a soldier. That is when you engage as a member of the SPDF. And then you have a salary package. So what would it be like? You have a basic salary.
In the region of how much a month?
At that time, honestly, I won't recall, because I was not much involved in these things.
Was it in keeping with the average for the...
Higher than the average, the national minimum wage. Much higher.
Much higher.
Yeah.
Did they have any other perks?
Depending on you see, we have a multi-skilled force. That is standard for small armors. You have to be multi-skilled. So people would be compensated for qualifications attained. And also you'll have, if I put it like the civilian, they call it risk allowance, something of that sort. If you're involved in dangerous trades, you see, like bomb disposal and all. So there'll be perks added on, depending on the qualifications you attain.
To go to another field, you say you were mostly in administration.
No, I was in operations.
Operations, not administration.
Not administration.
And tell us a bit more about ground police. You say it was a harbor. Most people, when they hear harbor, they think of boats and ships out there.
No, harbor is, in military terms, is a place you temporarily put up.
Yeah, like when the ship comes to harbor.
Harbor.
Yeah. But you say it was running for only 1 month?
A couple of weeks. I say end of August, from research, end of August to September.
So all those reports dating sort of quite extensive periods in between of people being tied to a post in the yard and flogged and tied upside down and put in little cubicles or the dark cell.
Dark cell.
Yeah, who was
No.
responsible for all that?
Dark cell, no. Grand Police, you don't know Grand Police. Never been there. You know Grand Police.
Yeah, when it was privately owned.
When it was. Yeah. No, dark cell, no. No. Your question was?
Who would have administered these forms of torture?
Anyone.
But was it? You say it was a prison.
No. Grand Police was a prison initially. It was abandoned. It was in disuse.
A prison run by the army or by the prison authorities?
It was before that was a prison run by the prison authorities, not by the army.
Okay.
It was closed. So we selected it for Abba. And then the political authorities decided we should stay there.
So once the political authorities decided you should stay there, how long did you stay there?
A few weeks.
That's all.
Yeah.
And then it was just
Yeah.
abandoned.
Yeah.
So there were no electricity posts in the yard to...
There were electricity posts were there. Because, the electricity had been disconnected, but the posts were there.
Okay, so it's not posts that the army planted in the courtyard
No.
deliberately to tie people
Oh,
to.
No. The poles were there because it was connected to electricity, the grid.
And that's where people were tied up.
That's where people were tied up, yeah.
Now, this one may be difficult to translate for you, but there's been the allegations that people were flogged using Ling coco,
No.
and you said they were flogged with polythene pipes.
There were people carrying polythene pipe. No.
But what were they flogged with?
They were using this quarter-inch polythene pipe. The pipes were there, but it was disused, so people just cut a
piece of
out of it.
But in your previous statement, you said you saw two people with their skin 50%.
That was not
of-
Ling coco.
Yeah.
That was how do you call it? That tree? Cassie.
Cassie is
Boss Cassie, yeah. That was not Ling coco.
Now, did this sort of thing happen often, or was it? Were
No,
these,
it was a one-off.
These were the only occasions.
Yeah.
These two.
Yeah.
And that was only after that attack on
On the commandos, yeah.
on the commandos up at Mont Blanc.
Mm.
I'm still not clear of your involvement in there. You say you witnessed it,
I was the chief of operations.
but you were there.
I was there.
You didn't stop it.
No,
Why?
because I thought it would bring me the results we wanted.
Okay, so at that point you were totally involved
Yes.
ideologically and carrying out the...
No, it's not ideology. That is an internal security operations that was badly done. I mean, if you're a soldier, you put yourself in your boots, in my boots, in our boots as soldiers, And you wake up one morning, and then there is an attack on your brother soldier. And then you're told there's a lot of weapons out there, you need to recover the weapons. I mean,
I would still not believe that beating the daylights out of people would help me find the guns, because
we not only beat the daylights of people because we handpicked people. There were information that led us to identify specific people.
but there was a court.
A court.
There's courts in the land.
Okay.
There have been courts in Seychelles. Wouldn't the being in possession of a gun was a criminal offense?
Obviously, you have to find the guns first.
So beating them up, you find the guns.
That is how it was done.
And that is what you have already apologized to the people of Seychelles
yes.
for. I respect that.
I mean, the whole being tied upside down thing and hit on the back of the feet seems to be a technique that was used maybe in other circumstances.
People, you see, I was the senior most officer. I take people can say a lot of things. But the point is, they were flogged. But then, I've met people who've never been there. You see, people can say whatever they want to say, especially if they feel their ego leads them to sort of say these things. But there are lots of lies as well associated to that. And most of those people, some of them, the law has caught up with them. Because they are known, they were known by communities, in the communities, who they were. You know my point? The situation is as follows. I find it this way. The state has a responsibility to ensure that people live in security. Amen. Women should not be raped. Children should not be molested, and all the rest of it. That is the responsibility of the state. So, the rapist and the pedophile also have rights. So, once the state fails in its duty to protect the citizens, then the state will have to take action to redress the situation. So what we did was, what the state did at that time was to attempt to redress the situation. But violating the rights of people does not solve the problem. It creates a much bigger problem. So my point is, and I continue to say that, are we Seychelles today in a better situation than we were then? If, say for example, the same events reoccur, how will we deal with it as a nation and the security of the people? Those are questions we need to address. Political authorities, everybody in the security sector, we have to come to terms with.
I suppose, one sort of consequence, of you being willing to come forward is that people have approached us and about your role in the events at Grand Police.
No.
Some people, you did say last time, you would like some of the people to come forward. They have come forward. So we will be informing you a little further about that.
I'll be here on 18th. I've got a letter.
Yes. On the 18th, you'll be coming back.
So,
so
as many times as you, we shall be here. I wish those people would be next to me.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's really enlightening for me, from what I've heard for you today, especially about the role of the army. So I'm very grateful to you. also the time periods, right? Because we've had some people tell us, well, your mandate ends in 1993. You're looking at the coup d'etat and, you know, and multi-party democracy was in 1993, so your mandate must end then. But what we're seeing is that this tentacles of this regime, you know, continued for quite some time and had impact on the human rights of people. And I think you have really underscored that today with your own story about what happened to you, you know, and we're talking 2006. Yeah, so... Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's really very dignified and admirable of you to come forward and to be willing to come forward again and to know that people have come as a result of you coming forward and implicated you in certain things, and your willingness to come forward and face that, I think, is very admirable. Yeah, that was the one, but I wasn't sure whether we wait for this person, on Friday. We don't have any more questions for you this time. Right? But thank you so much. We will adjourn now and we will be back at 11. Is that okay? Or you want longer? That's okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ernesta. Thank you.
All right.
can you please call the hearing number for the record?
This is Commission hearing number 11 of Monday, 7 October 2019, in case 001, Dorothy Chang Him et al., case 0096, Arma Chang Seng, and case 166, Julien Dauphin.
Can you please call the next witness?
Mr. Raymond Louise.
You can take a seat, Mr. Louise. Yeah. So, thank you for appearing before the Commission today. The Commission contacted you to give evidence in relation to case 001, Dorothy Chang Him et al., and in particular the Liberation Memorial Fund established by Law Decree number 24 of 1977. During his evidence regarding the administration of this fund, Mr. Payette advised the Commission that you were a member of the original board, I think. So the Commission would like to hear from you with respect to the administration of the fund, and in particular to address the claim made by the Chang Him family that they never benefited from the fund, even though they were legally entitled to do so, and they sought to do so. So that's what we would like to hear from you from today. Thank you.
Good morning. In response, I would like to state that I cannot recall having ever been on such a committee. I can give a rundown of what I did from the period of time of the coup d'etat up to the time I left the police force. I can never recall having ever been on that committee. How come my name was mentioned, I don't know.
I mean, sometimes in this country there's more than one person with the same name, right? So we might have got the wrong
No,
Raymond Louise.
I'm the only person
You're
with
the
that
only
name.
person with that name.
Yes.
I don't know. So you were a police officer?
Yes, I was a police officer. In fact, I was at Prale on the day of the coup d'etat. I was a senior instructor at the police training school.
So you were not.
Pardon?
You were not present when the coup went down. Then you weren't in Mehe. You weren't present. You're in Pralen.
No,
Yeah.
I was on Prale.
Okay.
In fact, I was about to leave for the UK on the 6th, and I was held up because of the coup d'etat. I had to go in November.
Okay. Yeah. So we do have a document, and maybe we show it to the gentleman? Which, I mean, this is a letter dated 24th of May 1993 from James Michel in his capacity as Minister for Finance, Information and Defence. It's addressed to Mr. Payette, and it says the members of the board are James Michel, Chairman, you, Raymond Louise, Member, and Mr. Francis Chang Leng, Secretary, Treasurer. But I'll just show you this. And
Yes, I've seen it. But I
never did
truthfully,
anything.
I cannot recall ever having been told that I was on that committee. I know of a fact, of a case whereby my name was used as a fait accompli on certain document, and I queried the person in authority about that, but not this one.
And so what was your position? You were a senior instructor in the police, you said, or did I make that
No,
up?
at that, on the day of the coup d'etat, I was a police inspector and senior instructor at the police academy, at the police training school in Prague. But in 1993, I was the commissioner of police.
So you were very senior, commissioner of police. So maybe they, put you 1993. Yeah, 1994, I think.
In fact, I was commissioner of police from 1992 to 1995 when I resigned.
Right. And why did you resign?
Yes. Pardon?
Why did you resign in 95?
To tell you, to be frank, I had a problem with the administration. I could not work anymore with them.
Is that because you weren't with them?
No, because I'm somebody who's very liberal in my thoughts. I don't want to be made the lackey of anyone.
Okay. And were you the lackey of the army?
No, not to anyone.
No. You didn't want to be the lackey. So when you resigned in 95, could you find another job?
Yes, in fact, in 1997, I was at the official opening of the police academy at Port-la-Rue. I was approached by the president, Mr. Raymond, who invited me to come and help with training of the recruits. And in 1998 to 2008, I was the senior instructor and at the police academy. I was the senior research officer and instructor at the police academy until I resigned in 2008.
Right. So you have no recollection
of ever having been.
No one ever asked you whether you think this person should receive some money from a fund?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Monsieur Louise. Bonjour. Est-ce que vous connaissez on des ententes qui tiennent dans sa fund là, sa memorial fund?
Pour vous, faut me pas rappeler du tout, moi. Parce que si ça était la cause mon titre vraiment on the move, mon tout le temps aller venir, mon dans le course dehors, tout le monde est allé encore le course. Finalement, mon airport setup sécurité pour airport, ça des disaster ainsi de suite. Mon pas rappeler jamais dimanche ça.
Ça l'été
94. Pas rappeler jamais assis dans le comité.
Mais où tu connais, vous dites ça comité existait, vous dites tiens dans ça fond là.
Mon pas rappel. Non. Mon pas rappel du tout pas m'a dit.
You said your name had been used on another occasion for something.
I'm not prepared to discuss it.
You're not prepared to discuss it. Sounds even more interesting, right? If you're not prepared to discuss it.
It has nothing to do with the present situation.
No, nothing. Okay. My curiosity. Yeah.
D'après un document qui nous en a là, souvent, il y en a une lettre qui sort côté l'État M. Léopold Payetti nous aborde. Et les qui sort côté lui, il y a le côté M. Michel, qui est ministre de Défense et Finance. Il recommande un paiement pour du monde. Et puis ça, les qui sort côté M. Michel, il y a le côté M. Chang, Leng, le payer. Jamais une lettre comme ça n'arrive pour initier pour dire oui, je connais.
Non, on rappelle tout ça, mais elle n'arrive pour ça. En effet, on peut même imaginer pour dire des situations comme ça, il devrait être peut-être le file, mon file de la police, comme quoi qui mon kilo là. Mais ni mon file, je ne pas trouver. On fait des marches, mon file, je ne pas trouver. Depuis 2008, on fait certains du monde dans le gouvernement, même ministre, par voir mon file. On a un document là-dedans, quelque chose de personnel, moi, tu le mets devant, on peut avoir mon file.
Nous pouvons gagner plus de problème par avoir un file quand tu es dans le droit.
Moi, sincèrement, on peut dire, je ne me rappelle du tout, personne, du moment où le comité, ni précis, je ne me rappelle.
C'est à l'époque, pareil, depuis avant, si je ne pas trompé, tout bon appointement, le bon board, le bon quelque chose, tu gagnes gazetté.
Oui, oui.
Si c'est une gazette ou non, ou dans la police, ou
c'est ça. Et normalement, il vient avec un lit qui a le file. Mais même pas si le comité, on me rappelle si le comité, du tout.
Bonjour, M. Louise. Est-ce que vous êtes capable de rappeler vaguement qu'avec coup d'État, il y a un bandit qui gagne tué?
Il y a un bandit
qui gagne tué.
Ah oui, on a couru, on entend.
Oui, il y a M. Jani, il y a M. Chang. Après, il y a aussi sa soldat qui participe donc dans le coup d'État.
Ah, M. Rachel.
M. Rachel. Est-ce que vous êtes conscient que le président, dans sa temps, tu peux faire une démarche pour donner un coup de main à Bandi Moun qui s'appelle, disons, Bandi Moun victime coup d'État? Ou vaguement, est-ce que vous rappelez un souvenir qui ça 3 personnes qui ont tué? Après, il y a une démarche président pour essayer d'aider financièrement ça Bandi Moun.
En effet, Berazani, moi je pourrais comprendre que les autres même là-dedans. Je connais très bien. M. Chang, moi je très bien que lui, Larry Bazar. Francis Rachel, je tout connais, je connais son madame, je sorti même là-dedans là, sur lui. Mon temps déjà fait ça là, donc je vous donne Bandi Moun. Mais mon pas tout intéresse moi avec ça, moi à cause par exemple déjà d'intervalle, mon busy avec mon training à l'étranger, local et travail avec ou mon mercenaire, mon là-dedans à l'arrestation, ainsi de suite, rebelle, sur la mon là-dedans. À Charles Airport, à setup, sécurité airport, tu n'as pas. Moi, j'envoie là-bas, à setup, ça me busy avec ça, moi. Je pas tout ennuyé, moi, avec quelque chose qui n'est pas vraiment prêt avec mon travail. C'est ça. Sur moi, mon temps, ça fait. Mon temps,
Mais, ordinairement, là, il y avait un cas, un meurtre, ou bien, dans ce cas, la police ouvre un file, il commence l'enquête.
Oui, oui.
Où tu es dans la police, tu es dans le coup d'État.
Le coup d'État, on peut dire que tu peux aller.
Où tu es basé pour aller.
Je suis basé pour aller à TRNUC school.
Après, là, on devient commissionnaire.
Après ça, mon sorti, mon pour aller, on a le corps 77, mon tourné dans le corps 79, encore dehors, 80. Mon kit pour aller comme commandant dans l'académie. On est en maille, reposté ici, en 80. Là, on a fait mercenaire, ainsi de suite.
Oui, mais l'État au commissionnaire, mais on a un file, par exemple, la mort Chang ou bien.
Non, du tout.
Et puis, Bandi Moun qui disparaît.
Ni pour Chang.
Bandi Moun qui disparaît. Si je te débrouille dans un file.
Mon temps nommé beaucoup d'autres, mon compte d'autres bien. Mais vraiment, je ne pas battre avec ça du tout.
Quand même, l'État, on a la police.
Quand mon vini, mon commissionnaire de la police, ça va quelque chose qu'on ne va pas lever avec moi du tout, ni voir file, non rien.
Ordinairement, quel département de la police qui peut garder sa bonne file?
Normalement, si tu enlèves dans ça, tu enlèves la police, ça. Mais vraiment, avec toi, man, roulement qui est arrivé, coup d'État, ainsi de suite, mon pas connaît pour si tu as une bouse file ou quelque part. Mais vraiment, mon appel, ce qu'on a tu enlèves dans le registry. Tu s'appelle le registry de la police. Tu l'enlèves. Pour pas connaître qui est une bouse, ça.
Est-ce qu'il y a des officiers spéciaux qui.
Tu as un policier qui l'enlève dans le registry.
Tout le temps, il travaille dans le registry.
Oui, tout le temps, Tu as des sortes de raisons comme ça. Si mon capable recall back, probablement peut-être avec Nérésia d'Oglé. Après, tu n'as pas le public. Nérésia d'Oglé. Il parle de M. Roukou. Roukou. Après, tu n'as pas de fille, là, mais il m'a oublié son nom. Comment est-ce que Nérésia a recall?
Monsieur Louise, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Au pan venir ici pour peut-être nous affaires mutinerie ou bien mercenaires, mais vu que nous avons une petite question. Qui rôle utilisé les tenants dans l'affaire mutinerie? La police, qui rôle utilisé?
De quoi? Moi, les gens fait sur mutinerie. Moi, je plutôt par l'évidence et de l'arrestation, mais pas de rôle tellement clair à cette. La dernière fait l'arrestation, question, et ainsi de suite.
Les affaires mercenaires aussi, ou pas aucun rôle important là-dedans?
Avec mercenaires, moi, je l'arrête en l'air, ça dit mon qui a physique, il y a ça, Lazon, M. Sims, avec son madame, on l'a fait view. Généralement, je travaille comme ça, un travail qui est difficile comme ça.
Ça, M. Sims, qui?
Bob Sims, Robert Sims.
Oui, qui était ici?
Lui, il pressé en l'air la case côté de qu'on appelle la vidéo, tu peux c'est là dans la case. Lui, tu peux ça l'argent.
L'argent pour qui?
L'argent pour ces mercenaires. En effet, le temps de l'arrêter, lui, tu n'as outil avec lui et tu as l'argent.
Qui cache des outils?
D'après mon qui t'a garde mon qui t'a avec lui, qui t'a avec la case, c'est dans des fusils, dis-moi, avec un ça. Moi, je pas tu vois, moi. Je tu vois des fusils avec un revolver. Un paillet qui est là. C'est lui. Ça qui dit avec moi dans le transport pour nous pas avec des mercenaires qui inspecteur Bell, il fait quitter mon quoi dans la police. David Bell.
Ou tu prends l'argent avec lui ou bien tu...
Non, en effet, après ça, plus tard, on demandé avec Payet qui est arrivé dimanche, il a 80 000 roupies. Tu gagnes par Banjibon qui vient faire l'enquête, CID. On ne va pas arriver après. Dis-moi, j'ai une cote, j'ai 80 000 roupies dans la table.
Sims, c'est quoi, lui, non?
Non, c'est l'Africain, Robert Sims.
Qui unité au 17 airport?
Pardon?
Qui unité?
Ça qui comme là, il y a un sage en bas l'autorité SCA là, qui met les sécurité airport comme là.
Qui est son fonction exactement?
Mais manque à l'ouvert.
Qui est son fonction exactement là au 17 up?
Pardon?
Qui est son fonction? Qui est supposé faire?
Fonction sécurité airport.
Oui, mais sécurité bien expliqué un peu. Nous ne pouvons pas comprendre ça dans l'affaire. Nous connaissons un peu l'air qui fait airport là-bas, qui doit faire. À cause de la sécurité, un mot simple, ça, qu'il faut avoir la capacité. explique un peu qui it entails exactly, M. Louise. Merci.
Pour l'information, c'est un intervalle. Du monde qui entre sur l'aéroport. Dans le sens, nous partis faire préparer, nous faire border patrol, border security, ou bien custom security dehors. Et présent, nous avons bien guetté qui du monde entre avec, qui du monde sorti l'aéroport. Fouille avec, get ban quelque chose entre avec. En effet, c'est un côté, ça intervalle, c'est un côté flight entre sorti. Et mon petit point c'est dit 24 l'aéroport. Et par exemple, bien fait on the job training avec des gens qui parce qu'on n'a rien à travail. Bien, comment c'est que les autres? Avait dit comment c'est que moi avec des autres gens. Par exemple, on peut couvrir tout le air qui vient ici, India, Madagascar, you name it. On the job training. Pour faire ci, pour faire ci, premièrement, qui aucun n'a rien contrabande pas entrer dans le pays, ni fusil, ni drogue, whatever, de qu'est-ce que maybe. C'est tout, le entry point. Et ça veut dire que nous avons parti aussi faire ci, qui avion aussi qui est allé, par aucun n'a rien, c'est pas des détails là. Ok? Et en effet, peut-être pour ajouter, c'est le monde qui a le training pour ça. Ça a été évalué à la police, 6 mois. En 86, il a expressément pour ça l'Angleterre.
Le temps où tu montais, M. Louise, pour rencontrer M. Robert Sims. Qu'est-ce qui est arrivé après? Le temps, Ling est arrêté, Ling... Qui procédure qui suit avec lui?
J'arrête là parce que je venu ici pour illegal purpose. Et il y a aussi une passe ensemble, il doit tout le monde rester mercenaire.
Ok.
Dans Ling check, ainsi de suite, tout. Après, tu gagnes. Répatrié, c'est d'Afrique ensemble. L'autre, tout ensemble.
Ok.
Ils sont madame, tout.
Ok.
Can I just clarify with you? So, you were the Commissioner of Police from 1992 until 1995.
Yes.
And then you resigned.
Yes.
And why did you resign? I don't quite understand why you resigned from that very senior position.
I tried to tell you earlier that I could not get along very well because I have my own concept of what modern policing is all about. One. Secondly, I do not want to be a stooge or lackey of anyone. And I respect everybody, but when I'm right, I'm right.
So what does that mean, be a stooge or a lackey? Does that mean you don't have autonomy in what somebody tells you what to do and you have to do it?
Thank you very much for that. Yes.
But who
because the police also change.
Yeah.
Because we were under the colonial police, policing
Yeah.
the colonial days.
Yeah.
But now, with having obtained independence and we a sovereign nation, we have to think.
But you still had did you still have the British there at that time, or?
Pardon?
Who was the one that was like telling you as Commissioner of Police? Who made you feel like a lackey?
But they could not understand what I wanted to. I wanted autonomy for the police.
Yeah.
I didn't want the head of state to be the commissioner of police.
Okay, so it was like
I am the commissioner of
president.
police and not the head of state. I
Uh-huh.
respect the head of state,
All right,
but I am the
okay.
commissioner of police.
Yeah, I
I
get it.
know the profession.
Yeah. So the head of state actually wanted to be like the Commissioner of
Yes,
Police
yes.
and tell you what to
Yes.
do, and you weren't going to have that. So you,
definitely.
well, you left.
Definitely.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Thanks.
And he told me I could resign if I wanted, so I said, okay, I'll resign.
But what sort of things did he want you to do? Like arrest certain people or release certain people? Or what did he want you to do?
I'll give you a typical example. The president, the vice president went to the National Assembly and he said, oh, well, I'll get the commissioner of police to send a beach patrol on La Digue. Well, it's not for the president or the vice president to say that. It is up to me to decide where I send.
So they were trying to manage your forces and what you did, and yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, okay. Well, you were quite lucky that you could resign and get another job.
In fact,
Yeah.
the president, I was at the opening ceremony of the police academy at Port Lowry. The president asked me to come back, and I came back. Well, I was not happy because I have not been able to pass on what I have up to now. Been difficult. Because policing has to evolve with the changing of society. I went to England. I went to England. I went to India. Everywhere I went, I tried to learn as much as possible as what a society, what the police has to do in a society. We are not the cudgel. I mean, the law is not a cudgel to beat people with. The law is for relationships.
Mr. Louise, going back to nous retournons petit encore sa Memorial Fund, Liberation Memorial Fund. Est-ce que vous pas rappel qu'on n'a aucun involvement avec, etc. Mais est-ce que peut-être on n'a aucune conversation avec Monsieur Payet, Chief of Staff, ou bien Monsieur Michel qui est chair sa comité, on n'en a aucune conversation peut-être l'eau ça fond là?
Non, mais ça m'a dit, franchement dit, sincèrement, on ne me rappelle du tout pour l'eau ça.
Aucun involvement?
Non, on ne me rappelle du tout.
Ok.
Et l'indifférence.
Ah, comment on vient là pour faire bonne sémantique, pour dire la vérité? Non, franchement dit, sincèrement, on ne me rappelle du tout.
Ou pas peut rappeler du tout, ou bien ou pas fin participe du tout dans sa.
Non, mais ça on pas participe, on rappelle participe là-dedans. Mon sait fait travail, mon esprit on dit, mon peut-être mon fait mistake, mon sait rack my brain, virer devant derrière, on pas rappelle du tout. Forme partie à comité. Non.
Thank you very much for coming, even though you couldn't give us the information that we thought you could give. But it's also interesting for us to know that your name's there, but you didn't participate. We'll find out what that means, maybe. I don't know. Thank you very much for coming. We very much appreciate it. And you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we're due for the next witness. Could you call the next witness, please?
Mr. Francis Chang Leng.
I,
Francis Chang Leng,
Francis Chang Leng,
swear
swear
to tell the truth,
to tell the
the
truth,
whole truth,
the whole truth,
nothing but the truth.
nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for appearing before the Commission today, Mr. Chang Leng. The Commission has called you for the same reasons it called the last witness in relation to case 001, Dorothy Chang Him et al., and in particular to give evidence concerning the Liberation Memorial Fund established by Law Decree number 24 of 1977. We had evidence from Mr. Payette about this fund, and he said that you were a member of the original board of the fund, and we were hoping you could help us understand how the fund was administered, but in particular the claim of Mrs. Chang Him that her family never benefited from the fund, even though they were legally entitled to benefit from it. They were named in it, and they had sought to benefit from it. So any evidence you could give us in relation to that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. I think a slight correction on the original member of the fund. I'll tell you my story on the fund, okay? In late 1991, early 92, I was appointed as Director General Funds Management in the Ministry of Finance. The purpose was to set up the fund. The division was precisely to put all special funds under one umbrella in the Ministry of Finance. It was thought then that it would give better control to the finances of the fund. If I recall, there were something about 10 to 12 funds, but I need stand to be corrected. The main ones which I remember was, the biggest one was Social Security Fund, Seychelles Pension Fund, which today is the Seychelles Pension Scheme, which today is Seychelles Pension Fund, National Provident Fund, which had been defunct by then, Liberation Memorial Fund, Archbishop Macarius Fund, Wheaton Bequest Fund. There's quite a number of the smaller ones. They were set up during the colonial days and some. My role, I would probably say, I was more involved in the Liberation Memorial Fund around 92, I would say. Okay? And I became, I think, treasurer stroke secretary. And when I took over, there were some beneficiaries who were benefiting from the fund, but I don't recall the fund has significant amount of money. Probably maybe, if I recall, 1 million, maybe 1.5 or something, which maybe less, maybe more, give or take. And that was being invested in government bonds, government treasury bills, and there were not many transactions per se. And my role basically was when meetings are convened, I will take the minutes and then of course submit the accounts. If I recall, the person who was then members of the fund of Liberation Memorial Fund was the former brigadier, Colonel Payette, the Commissioner of Police, and the former President Michel.
So you would have meetings with these people, or like direct meetings?
I would probably say we've had maybe 5-6 meetings. Because by the time, by 92, the fund was probably less active than it was, say, post-77.
And who was the Commissioner of Police at that time?
I don't remember whether it was... I just crossed it when I was coming. I don't remember whether it was him.
I think he said...
I have a strange feeling.
He was 92 to 95.
Yeah, so it could be. I was the same period, actually, 92 to 95. I also left in 95.
You have mentioned 4 people on the board, and I think the decree called for 3 people.
I said the Commissioner of Police by virtue. I believe, I don't have copy of the regulations, but I believe there was then probably you may have it with you. Then I think it was the Minister of Education, I think. That's probably why President Michel was involved. And then the Commissioner of Police, the Chief of Staff of the SPDF.
I mean, it says 3 members shall form a quorum, but of not less than 3 persons, so there could be more persons. And would you make recommendations that this person should who decided who benefits?
The way it worked, it's like all these funds, was that someone would write a letter, probably either to the president or to the minister or one of the members, then it would be sent to me then to be processed. But as I say, I don't recall during my days, during the period, I actually left in 95 when I was in PS Finance, and I don't really recall getting new cases. There may have been, but I don't recall.
So someone would write a letter saying, I need help.
Yes.
And then if they wrote to the president, I suppose he would decide whether to send it to the Liberation Memorial Fund or...
Now, if it's something which is seen as the objects within which the fund was set up, then it was sent to me. And my role in all these funds was to process it in line with the objectives of the fund.
So the board didn't sort of meet and look at all the letters that had been sent and say, this person, falls within our objectives, or it was just you received I
would process it, and then in the very few meetings which we've had, as I said, we would bring the letter and the processing.
So Charles, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Comment ça va?
Bon, bien ou même.
Ok. Moi, un peu confusé. Je te fais 2-3 meetings, ça aborde. Ma question, je connais vraiment le cas qui est commissionnaire police salitant. À quoi il n'est pas facile, pas difficile pour oublier son nom. Tu laisses 3 autres l'aborde. Pas qu'à imaginer du tout ça du monde.
Moi, répondre en créole ou en anglais? So, with due respect, I've been out. First of all, I've been out of government for 11, 12 years. Okay. That happened between 91, 95. I can tell you the Commissioner of Police, people who I've known have been Commissioner of Police, but I cannot tell you precisely which period a Commissioner of Police have been. I can go back to after the coup, Mr. Camille, then there was Mr. Fontaine, then I think there was Mr. Pilet also, then there was Mr. Louise, there was Mr. Kilendo, then the one before Mr. Lamonte, but I cannot tell you who was precisely. I'm getting old.
Yeah, we appreciate it's a long time ago. We're asking people to think about things that they wouldn't necessarily have imprinted, in their minds. I mean, the reason we're interested, particularly in the Commissioner of Police, because Mr. Louise, who just left, has no recollection of being involved in this at all. So if it wasn't 5 to 6 meetings over a period of 3 years is not really a lot of involvement, right? So, I mean, he could have forgotten.
I think
right?
It was probably, sorry to have intervened. I think it's probably because, me, for example, I don't really have a lot of recollection about Liberation Memorial, because it's a small fund. There was maybe about 12, even less. I don't even remember the beneficiaries, in the sense that you knew an event happened, it was set up, but you don't recall, because very, very little activity took place, I would say, the time I was at 91, 95.
The strange thing for us, I think, is it was set up and it named people. Yet one of those, at least, we know, Davidson Chang Him's family, they didn't receive anything from that fund.
Honestly,
You
I
have
don't
no
know.
explanation.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Chang, you said you were on that board from 92 to 95. 91 to
91,
90.
92 to 95. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You are correct. Yes.
Now, I have a letter here dated 25th of August 2003, addressed to you as Secretary, Board of Trustees, Liberation Memorial Fund. Asking you, he said, it would be appreciated if arrangements could be made for the following children to be assisted with a monthly allowance of 550 each from the Liberation Memorial Fund with immediate effect. And it's signed by Colonel Payette. How come?
How come? Because you see, when I left, I left Director General FMD to become Principal Secretary of Finance in 1998, and the division still fell under Minister of Finance. So letters will come, all letters will come from Minister of Finance, and it's channeled through the different divisions. I'd pass on my position of Director General to someone else. So all letters, see, in government, those days, I don't know about now, all letters are addressed to the Principal Secretary, Finance. Okay?
But here it's addressed to you as
Yes,
the
but somebody-
Secretary of the
yes,
Board of
it could be somebody else
Trustees.
send a letter to me, but it doesn't mean it's the right address here. What I will do, I will submit it to the right person. But I don't recall.
And then again in 2003, 14th of August, there's a letter again from Colonel Payette to Miss Jacqueline Pierre, Social Security Funds. And it says, I'd be grateful if you would let me have an updated list of the beneficiaries who are presently receiving monthly allowances under the Memorial Fund. So at that point, it was Social Security paying.
Okay. I think confusion arrived. There's a lot of confusion has arrived over the years. Because by virtue, Social Security Fund in itself is an entity then. Now it's changed, which had its own statute, 1975 Social Security Act. That was. It's often people in Seychelles, because the late Miss Pierre has been somebody who's been in government for, you probably remember him, Mr. Green, somebody which everybody sends letter to her when it comes to social security matters. And to a degree, because the fund was being managed within FMD, for example, Funds Management Division, people didn't recognize Funds Management Division. They all say Social Security Fund. So people would send a letter to Miss Pierre because it was administered under the same building, because Funds Management Division Fund was in Ocean Gate House, which housed Social Security Fund. Its office was not physically in the Ministry of Finance, which then was in the Central Bank building, but Funds Management Division was based in the Social Security building at Ocean Gate House. So that's why you get this confusion.
Yes, but this was Colonel Payette writing to Jacqueline Pierre, and he was a member of that fund. I mean, surely he must have known.
But as I say, I was not in Social Security. I left Social Security in 1998, and somebody else was appointed as director. And Jacqueline became director Social Security sometime later, probably around this period. I don't recall when she became director.
There's another one here, 21st May 2003, again addressed to you as Secretary of the Board of Trustees. It is, the above mentioned is the 7-year-old daughter of the late, I'll leave the name out, who was an employee of the Seychelles People's Defense Forces until she passed away on the 12th of June 2001. In order to help with her daily needs, I recommend that Miss, I'll leave the name out, is assisted with a monthly allowance of 550 from the Liberation Memorial Fund. Now, that person was an employee of the Defense Forces. I don't think it had anything to do with the Liberation Memorial Fund. Yet there's a recommendation that her child be paid from there. There is something there. We have several of those. There's one of a captain who passed away in South Africa. Army casualty, you could say. But all these documents, they go from 2003 back to 95, 90. There's nothing between 77, I think it was October 77 when the decree was promulgated. There's nothing between 77 and 95.
It's in the 80s, yeah.
84, until 85, 83, 84. Apparently that is when the first board was set up.
Okay.
Would you be able to enlighten us on what might happen to any payments, if any, that were made between 77 and 82, 83?
I think before that, but I stand to be corrected, please. I'm not one to make a statement, which eventually I realize. Before, as I think I mentioned earlier, in late 91, 92, the Ministry of Finance actually brought in all these special funds under one division. Many of them, some of them, because they were set up to provide scholarships to Seychellois, like the Wicon Bequest, for example, or Archbishop Macarius Special Fund. They were under ministries responsible for some specific. For example, if it's something to do with scholarship, it fell under Ministry of Education. If it fell under something to do with health, it probably fell under Ministry of Health. So then it was decided to bring everything into one umbrella, which is the Funds Management Division. So that is why I presume probably this record, you got it from the Ministry of Finance or the Social Selective Fund. So what's the call? I don't know what the call it used to be here. So I presume that anything before that would have been the Department Ministry, and I think, and I'm, as I said, so corrected, is that the fund, Liberation Memorial Fund, was probably being administered by the Ministry of Education, but someone can probably remember from the old days of Ministry of Education.
I mean, I think we do have, like Mr. Michel was the one who appointed it does look like as the Minister of Education it was being administered. I just, want to say that in terms of other people, the Act does provide for the maintenance, education, benefit or advancement of such other persons as the Board of Trustees may nominate, but it looks like it would be a letter and then Mr. Payette would make a recommendation. It wasn't actually a board discussion about including people.
It may happen also. There has been many cases, which I can't recall the names, where someone in the military probably has passed away or when the family has a problem, where they write, Mr. Payette may have returned to the Ministry of Finance to get support, and support may have been paid from the Social Security Fund as opposed to Liberation Memorial. I believe there has been many cases like that in the past. Because
where would one start looking if one wanted to find the accounts of the Liberation Fund from its inception? You've been in finance, maybe you can tell us.
Well, I've been in finance since the Central Bank, 78. So
close enough. We're looking from 77.
I think, whilst everybody would like to know, I don't, as PS Finance, between 98 to something like 2000, and I forgot actually what I think what you will probably find is a lot of these records, some may be there, some may not be there. Okay? And most documents, once it's studied, in my days, I don't know now, maybe it's changed. The tradition in most ministries, because they don't keep all these records except banks. Banks are required to keep it for, I mean, I'm saying that because central bank, I know it was kept for ages and ages. But I think many ministries, once audit has taken place, there's a tendency because of space or not by design, but by default, documents get astray for lack of proper place or something. So, Minister of Education, who's the Minister of Education? I'm just thinking aloud, who will probably know. I think Mr. Confé made a deposition, so probably Mr. Confé would, he's already covered it.
I'll have to call Mr. Confé back. Yeah. I don't really want anything else. No. Thank you so much for coming and not really enlightening us much further, but little steps, we'll eventually get there. But we do very much appreciate your willingness to come forward and share with us what you know about this fund and its administration. And so thank you very much. And if you don't have any further questions for us, we don't have anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I would like you to first of all, congratulate you for the work you're doing so far and all the best in your deliberations. I think it's a very important job you do, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so that we now are going to adjourn for lunch, and we will be back at 1 p.m., at which time, what will we be doing, Michael? We will start a new case, Julien Dauphin, case 166 at 1 p.m. Thank you.
All rise.